Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I kind of played around with the title a little bit, and I'm going to call this book review the Sodbuster review. So, this month with the reading had a lot of like prairie and the pioneer and the frontier, and so I have a stack of 5 books to show with you, actually one audiobook, and then I finished an Audible book that I'm going to also talk briefly about. I'm going to get started with the non-frontier books, and we did the Penderwicks by Jean Birdsall, and I know this, I'm late to the game. I listened to this oh my goodness, about a year ago, and I just decided that it was not the time for us. There was a lot of things with the way the siblings interacted with each other that I was like, okay, I don't need this right now, and I put it away. And we ended up listening to it again because we kept hearing people that I knew and they loved it. I'm like, okay, let's give it a second chance. My children did enjoy this. It probably isn't a favorite of mine. There are 4 girls. They are without a mother, and they tend to get into a lot of scrapes with the next door boy from a rich family, and the mother is kind of a hoity-toity type of thing and just not a very nice woman, very stereotypical. And then one of the older girls, I'm just sharing with you the things I didn't like about it, by the way. Then one of the older girls kind of has a heart palpitation thing for the gardener, and then finds out that he has a girlfriend, so now she's kind of moody and thinks she's dumb, and then she realizes he's not with that girl anymore, and it just is like, ugh, really didn't want to deal with that right now. But yeah, it was sweet. I just think I prefer things like the Saturdays, and we're doing the Moffats right now, and I kind of just prefer all that, so I am not going to pursue the rest of the series just because we enjoyed those and then listened to them over and over again. So, and since this wasn't a particular favorite, there wasn't anything bad with it. It just is kind of like they are a Murphy family. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong, and it kind of just kept biting them in the butt with the rich lady next door. So that's kind of unfortunate. And then the other book that was not a frontier pioneering book was Woman to Women by Joy somebody. It'll be right here. And this is sharing Jesus with a Muslim friend. Now, I kind of read this mainly because she lived within the Muslim community. She was a missionary daughter in the Middle East, and it was horrific for her. And then she came back home, and she was kind of afraid of them. She lives in Canada, and then she basically just learned how to become they're still missionaries, but she learned more about learning who they were so that she could communicate with them with her faith. And the main reason I read this is because since she lived with them as a missionary kid and as a missionary wife, a lot of the things that I was confused about within the Muslim or Muslim, it's easier for me to say Muslim because otherwise I say Muslim, as I've done that my whole entire life. And so having a little bit different pronunciation, since I've heard it both ways, helps me distinguish the fabric from the person. Anyway, she kind of talked about how they view things, how the Quran views things, how different sects view things, S-E-C-T-S, that word, views things, and just conversations they had. So it was really enlightening. I really liked it because she wasn't about, you can only be my friend if you are a Christian, which I do not agree with that idea at all. She mainly wanted to be there to be able to answer their questions. So I really liked it from that aspect. Again, all of my book reviews, well, not all, most of my book reviews are on Goodreads, and that will be linked down below. I just try to talk a little bit more about personal feeling rather than what others might think of it in this. So personal feeling was, it just helped me answer a lot of questions. I probably will keep that book because it's good to kind of refresh and review and things like that. So let's kind of talk about the Sodbuster books. So first of all, I finished the Audible book of one of the most revered classics of all times, and that is The Last of the Mohicans by James Fenimore Cooper. And that book is actually the second book in the something series. I don't remember the series name, but it's the second book. But it's the one that's most talked about, so I didn't know it was part of a series. I think The Deer Slayer is the first one. Anyway, that book was the most boringest book I have ever read. I do not understand why it's a classic. The guy just loves to throw in words and descriptions and yada, yada, yada. And the story plot line, they get caught, they escape, they get caught, they escape, they get caught. Oh, and then at the end, like, there's a thing that happens and you're just like, okay, what was the point of this? So, I did not like that book. I think I gave it 2 stars. So glad to be done with that book. So, I didn't like it. On that note, let's talk about one I did enjoy. The Sodbuster Venture. So, I saw this book and I had to get it. It is by Charlene Joy Talbot. And this is the story about a young girl who lives with she doesn't live with him, but she helps an elderly man who is dying, and he has sent for his sweetheart. She's a teenager, and she has a sister whose husband is not a very nice man. So she wants to stay with this old man and help him out, so she doesn't have to be over there, because she doesn't like the way he treats her or looks at her. She's starting to bloom, become a woman, and so when the sweetheart, the man that ends up dying, arrives, she's like, hey, he left you this Sodbuster place, this homestead, for you to just build it and make it yours. He just asked that you stayed here for a year to see if this would be something you could do. And so these 2 women basically become the Sodbusters and try to build this homestead over the course of a year. There are 2 brothers in here that are just your typical Western bachelor, disgusting type men. You've got the ranchers that come in, and you've got the farmer and the cowboy, whole feud thing going on. So again, it was just kind of like a reminiscence type book. It was fun, it was enjoyable. I won't keep it because, again, it was fun, it was enjoyable. I'm really glad I read it. I wish I could have gotten it through my library, but I couldn't. And it's just one of those things that I would probably keep for just the title alone because, well, but it probably wouldn't be read again. It's more of a young adult type book is what I would say, like maybe 70s young adult. Very Little House on the Prairie type of thing. And then what I ended up reading was The Stout-Hearted Seven. This is the true adventures of the Sager children orphaned in the Oregon Trail in 1844 by Netta Lones Fraser. And this is about the orphans that ended up at the Whitman missionary. And so as a young child, I loved the story of, they ended up at Marcus and Narcissa Whitman's mission thing within the Oregon Trail. And so it starts off with them trying to get to, their new homestead with the dad and the mom, and the 7 kids. Don't jump on the bed, sit down. Don't jump on the bed. Don't jump on the bed. Okay. And, are you 3? Yeah. You act like it. So basically they have the Oregon Trail that ends up, and it's the retelling of a true story in kind of more, yes, I'm almost done. It's in the, kind of like almost a fictionized way of telling this story. It was really fascinating. It was a hard life. Like these kids, I feel really bad for them. You do have a really good look at both the what happened when the white men came with the Indians and how the Indians retaliated. I thought it was a very balanced view. I'm trying to think of anything that, well, there's a massacre, okay? Anybody that knows the Whitman stories knows that there's this massacre that's going to happen, and there is some tears with this. It isn't, you know, like a lighthearted, here's a Little House on the Prairie book, go read it type of thing. It does have some difficult topics, but I really did enjoy this one, and I would read it again, so I'm going to keep it because, again, it was not an easy one to pick up. And then another one I finished is Jim Murphy, Desperate Journey. Why do you keep trying to get into this?
I don't know.
Jim Murphy, Desperate Journey. I love Jim Murphy. Anything that he writes, I have loved so far. And he is really good at taking historical history and turning it into a living book. So he's done Chicago Fire. He did Across the Country on an Immigrant Train or something like that. And he is really, really good at making it lively and enjoyable. I think he did The Boys Civil War too, now that I think about it. Anyway, he does a really good job. So this is about the Erie Canal and how it was for families, and how this hardship was. And again, it's kind of just a real look at the hardships of the pioneering spirit and things that they had to go through and deal with, and he puts it in that way. Some things that parents might not like, if you're looking for books maybe to give to your kids, this would definitely be one maybe for the older ones, because you have two siblings that tend to bicker and fight a lot. You put everybody on this little boat that has to go up and down the canal, going through muck and mire, dealing with not so nice people on the river, and meeting deadlines, all this kind of stuff. They bicker, they fight. Mom deals with it sometimes. Stop jumping on the bed. Mom deals with it sometimes, Dad deals with it sometimes, but more often than not, everybody's just too tired to deal with it, and I can relate to that. There is some of that in there. There is a man, long-fingered John, who is not a nice man. He's not the kind of, he is a villain, and he is portrayed as a villain. He likes to instigate fights, so there is this big Western showdown brawl, fist fighting, blood flailing everywhere at the end of the book, and flashbacks throughout the book. So those are some things that I think parents wouldn't like. I don't remember any words. I don't. And I tend to remember stuff like that, and I can't think of any. There is a whole thing with this girl. She wants to see more of this Irish boy that's on the villain's steamboat working, not steamboat, but he's on the boat that's taking packages everywhere. He's on that one. She's daydreaming about him. She's thinking about him. So there is that whole aspect throughout the book. And so that's actually a third thing that people wouldn't like. Or parents probably would not like. And actually that was one of the biggest issues I had with it, and of course so that's going to be the wrap up for this video. If you have any questions about specific things within these books, please leave them below. I have 4 extra kids this week, so I have 9 kids running around, and I'm trying to keep everything in my head remembered. I just have to get those books, a couple of those books, back to the library, so I needed to do that now. So until next time, have another cup of coffee and read another chapter. Bye. Bye. Okay, Johnny.